Hello and welcome to Studio RC, your daily encouragement for your recovery and your faith. My name is Pastor Max and I am an alcoholic and I am a believer. And I'm sober today only by the 12-step program and the fellowship. And so I want to just come in. We had talked previously about the 23rd Psalm, and I want to revisit the 23rd Psalm, and we're going to look at just two of the verses in particular. But let me read the whole 23rd Psalm. We'll get right into it. This psalm is a psalm that a lot of people know. It's familiar to many. Listen to these words that David wrote after he was older and had experienced hardships in life. He recognized the fact that the Lord was his shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely goodness and love, sometimes referred to as mercy, will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So I want to just focus on the fourth verse. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. One of the things I want to tell you, if you're in recovery, especially in early recovery, we often want to test ourselves. And I would just encourage you, life will test us enough. We don't need to test ourselves. There will be a moment when we find ourselves in the valley. We don't have to put ourselves there. We don't have to play on the train tracks, so to speak, to see how strong we are or how well we're doing in our recovery. We don't have to do that. Am I staying clean? Well, maybe if I go around people who are using, maybe I'll see how strong I am. Or I'll go to that barbecue, that keg party where they're doing keg stands, and maybe I'm going to see how strong I am. You don't need to do that. The truth is, we will find ourselves in a valley. Life has a way of doing that. But I want you to see this picture that says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, the shadow of death is not death. It's not real. It's a shadow. Yet how often have our fears, have the shadows, whether it's of death or of outcomes or those, have dictated our behavior? So often we get scared by the shadows, the shadow of unrealized expectation or the shadows of our fears. Those things will then prompt us to maybe make decisions we wouldn't otherwise make, or maybe we don't make any decision at all. We just stay put. But what's really interesting about a shadow, you must have a source of light at somewhere for there to be a shadow. So this shadow of death is not actually death, but there is a light source, and that light source is the light of God. So somewhere beyond this valley, on the mountaintop, there is a light force that's allowing there to be a shadow. And if we believe in the shadow of death as it being real, we don't need to do that, because there is a light source that when we get out of the valley, we are going toward that light. Take comfort in the fact that the shadow of death is not real. It tells us in the big book on page 43, the alcoholic or drug addict at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink. That shadow of death. There's nothing we can, our mind is afraid. Our defense must come from a higher power. We must get our defense from that light, from that higher power that is making a shadow even possible. And one of the things that it also tells us in the big book on page 43, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says, God is faithful. God doesn't make hard terms for those who seek him. So often, we think, oh, God's going to be elusive. God doesn't make hard terms. So as we are able to get past the shadow of death, as we're able to leave the valley, and the valley may be as you come to your bottom. The valley may be early sobriety as you physically find a way to overcome your obsession and your addiction to drugs or alcohol. So, but it says, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Our higher power in our valleys are with us. And we don't need to fear any of the shadows because our higher power is with us. One author said, and it was Henry Ward Beecher, said that the 23rd Psalm is the nightingale of Psalms. And because the nightingale, it sings its sweetest when the night is darkest. So the nightingale sings its sweetest when the night is darkest. Many people who are in those valleys, when we find ourselves in the valleys, sometimes we just need to get off and find ourselves in a quiet place. We need to quit struggling for just a few minutes, forgetting the details, stop our mind from racing, and as we sit and we just kind of slow down. Many have said in that moment, that feeling of the presence of God, that higher power, or if you will, of hearing the nightingale singing sweetly even in the darkness. We talk about in recovery that moment of clarity. Even in the valley, we can have a moment of clarity, that moment where we know that God is with us, that there is hope, that even though I am in a valley, even though there are shadows all around me, I can get sober. I can get clean. It's possible. And we have that moment. There is power in God's presence. The verse goes on to say, thy rod and your staff, they comfort me. And so one of the things to kind of understand as we paint this picture, the sheep that the shepherd is around, they're helpless. They are a helpless animal. They have no weapons to fight with. They're not looking for a fight, or there's not anybody a sheep can beat in a fight. Any wild beast is actually looking at sheep as easy targets. And so the sheep is often afraid because they have all these natural predators, and they have no defense except the shepherd. The shepherd carries a rod, which is a heavy, hard club, 2 to 3 feet long, kind of like a billy club. And when David wrote this psalm, he probably remembered his experience early in, it was recorded in 1 Samuel 17, where David tells Saul how he slew a lion and a bear protecting his sheep. He used his rod, his billy club, and that provided protection for the sheep and gave them peace of mind. The shepherd also carried a staff, which measured about 8 foot in height, and the end of the staff was turned into a crook. It's because many of the paths in Palestine, where this story is taking place, were along steep sides of mountains, and the sheep would lose its footing and slip down off the path, often hanging helplessly on the ledge below. With the staff, the shepherd could reach down and place the crook over the small chest of the sheep and lift it back onto the pathway. The sheep instinctively were comforted by the shepherd's rod and staff. What a picture. When we were in trouble, and as soon as they saw the staff, they relaxed. It is comfort to know that the shepherd will be able to meet us in our emergencies. Our shepherd will be able to be and meet us in the valleys. And when we get off the path, thy rod and thy staff, they take a lot of the dread and fear of the future out of our hearts. So I want to ask this question that I want you to think about and ponder. When you're corrected for being off course, are we relaxed and comforted, or are we defensive and defiant? How often in recovery, if our sponsor tells us, or at church, if we have someone who's kind of discipling us, if somebody calls us out on something, maybe we've shared our fifth step with our sponsor, and they start to see behaviors that are similar that we've shared about, or we've shared in our ninth step and we've started to make those amends, but we've started to repeat the behavior or something similar, and our sponsor calls us out on, this looks a lot like that. I'm going to venture to say most of us, unlike the sheep, are not relaxed and comforted when we're corrected. We get defensive. We get defiant. Who are you to tell me? How do you know? When the picture is that when the shepherd comes, when we're able to be corrected, when we're able to have a course correction and put back on the path, we should be relaxed and comforted. So today I encourage you, search your heart. Are you defensive and defiant when you get corrected? Can you pray to God for that change of heart to be relaxed and comforted so that when correction does come, and it will come for all of us in our faith and recovery journeys, that we can be relaxed and know that maybe during our prayer time, God reveals something and we really don't want to change it, but can we be relaxed and comforted to know that the shepherd just wants to get us back on path so that we could be of maximum usefulness to him and all those around us. So hopefully that encouraged you today as we took a little deeper dive into the 23rd Psalm, and know that the shadow of death is just that, a shadow. Don't be afraid of the shadows, and let the shepherd correct you and correct us and bring us back onto the path. May God bless you, and may you have be very encouraged by this word as you wrestle with it. Can't wait to see you next time at Studio RC. And remember, Recovery Church, there are 12 steps and there's one goal. God bless.